Welcome to the BCN and Friends podcast, where we hold interesting conversations about learning with a range of thought leaders, BCN certification holders, and industry professionals. Our goal is to create value and insight for you, our professional nurses across the emergency spectrum. We hope you find our discussions interesting, informative, sometimes funny, sometimes serious, and always worth your time.
In this podcast episode, we want to introduce you to our BCEN friend, Amy Grand. From her early days in critical care to her current work supporting BCEN's 6 national nursing certifications, Amy has dedicated her career to advancing excellence in emergency nursing. Her role is vital to the credentialing of over 63,000 credential holders and coordinating the efforts of more than 100 subject matter experts. This episode is called Life Moves Pretty Fast, So Does Certification.
I'm Holly Briggs, a professional development specialist at BCEN and one of your hosts for today. I'm joined by my co-host, Michael Dexter, Director of Professional Development at BCEN. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Holly.
It's great to have you with us. And in this episode of BCN and Friends, we have Amy Grand. It's a true pleasure to welcome one of our own on the podcast. Amy is a nurse serving as the Director of Certification and Accreditation at BCEN. She's handling all the details and often the unseen moving parts that keep all 6 of BCEN's national certifications alive and well. Michael, could you please introduce us to our BCEN friend, Amy?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Amy Grand is a passionate credentialing specialist with over 20 years of experience in high-stakes licensure and certification exams. Her role at BCEN has led Amy to develop and oversee 6 national nursing specialty certifications, supporting more than 60,000 credentialed nurses worldwide. Amy is a certified credentialing professional through the Institute for Credentialing Excellence. She earned her Master of Science in Medical Surgical Nursing from the University of Michigan. She's also the president-elect of the Accreditation Board for Specialty Nursing Certification and has played a key role in launching groundbreaking programs like the world's first burn nursing certification, the CBRN. With an extensive background in exam development and a passion for advancing nursing excellence, Amy brings incredible insight into the world of specialty certification. Amy, welcome to the BCN and Friends podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on here with us.
Thanks, Michael and Holly. It's a pleasure to chat with you.
Well, we want to ask a lot of questions about certification and nursing certification in general, but maybe you could start out just letting us know a little bit about why you went into nursing and how you ended up in your role here at BCEN.
Sure. So when I started college, I actually really wanted to be a special education teacher for children with learning disabilities like dyslexia. And that was my plan all along. Surprisingly, I had an amazing freshman biology professor, so a very large biology class. I connected with her instantly, kind of had developed a personal relationship, and she encouraged me to consider a career in nursing. So that is what I did, changed my majors, and 4.5 years later, graduated with my bachelor's degree in nursing. I worked in critical care nursing for a few years before I went back to school to get my master's degree. I worked as an acute care nurse practitioner for a few years. Then when I relocated to Chicago, I again worked as a nurse practitioner, but I wasn't really satisfied in my role. I think I was getting burned out, honestly, even though I had only been a nurse practitioner for a few years. So I started looking for other opportunities, and I literally stumbled upon an opportunity to work as a content developer for the nursing licensure exam. It was not something I knew ever existed or could exist within nursing. We take our licensure exam, and that's that. We never really think about where it came from. So I worked in that role for over 10 years and then came to BCEN in a similar type of role where I've been for almost 10 years.
And even in that role, you've certainly varied with your knowledge and your experience, and you've gotten involved in ABS&C, which is the Accreditation Board for Specialty Nursing Certification. But even we just had mentioned that you yourself hold a certification in certifications.
That's right.
And so you've been very involved in that world as well. And so coming on board at BCEN a while back when you joined, how have you seen your role continue to develop in the years that you've been here?
That's actually a really good question, Michael. I have been able to kind of further hone my exam development, item development, accreditation skills, that I learned when I worked for NCLEX, and 10 years seems like a long time, but it really isn't. And so I feel I'm working more intimately with our subject matter experts and the actual programs that I can, like I said, really hone in on those skills. Accreditation, meeting accreditation standards, that was not something I was familiar with when I worked on the NCLEX exam. So I've had the opportunity to, I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I am extremely familiar with the 18 standards that we must meet to achieve accreditation for specialty nursing certification programs, and also starting a new certification program from the ground up. That was something new for me, and I gained a lot of additional experience by being involved in that.
I'll be honest, you talking about the NCLEX and it like, I don't know, it reminded me of when I was finishing nursing school, and like everybody just gets focused on, okay, I've gone to school, I'm set to graduate, but I still have this very difficult, challenging exam, this standardized test right in front of me. And I think for any nurse listening to this podcast, like there will be that remembrance of just the anxiety that comes with it, the trepidation, the idea that like, okay, this can literally hold me back or set me up to really start in my career. So when nurses think about certification and think about sitting for another standardized test, their last memory was like, oh yeah, it was the NCLEX. So I know for myself, when I decided that I was going to sit for the CEN, I remember having that like, whew, okay. And I think I could tie it very quickly back to the NCLEX because that was the last kind of standardized exam that I had sat for. So knowing that nurses or even nursing students who are sitting and listening to this, and you're talking about this passion for standardized certifications and like testing, how did you go from anxiety, maybe a little uncertainty as a nurse, and then you were just like, now it's your passion? Like how did you kind of bridge that gap to say, I want to become an expert, because I 100% believe you are an expert on this subject. How do you help people go from, I'm a little anxious about this, I'm a little uncertain about this, to let me help you understand what it is that we do and what it is that we're trying to achieve with certification?
First of all, anxiety will never go away. I did not pass the NCLEX my first time. Full disclosure, that was probably one of the worst days of my life, right? But sat for it again and was successful. Even when I sat for my certification exam, the CCP, I was filled with extreme anxiety preparing and sitting for that exam. So I understand the anxiety and uncertainty, and it is normal. It is expected. It will never go away, no matter how much you prepare for an exam. But I think it's that level of anxiety that kind of pushes us right? To be more prepared, to do better, to never give up, right? I think nurses are unique in that way, right? We are a group of individuals that really strive to be better. And so I think professional certification is one of those ways. So again, I recognize that the anxiety, the uncertainty, that will always be there. And that is something I talk about with people. Recognize that that anxiety will not go away. And we may talk about ways to help minimize anxiety, but again, it's not going to go away completely. One thing that I kind of realized when I was working with NCLEX is that prior to that, like you mentioned, I never understood. I never even really thought about what is involved in a licensure or certification exam, right? You sit for the NCLEX and you pass or fail, and then that determines the trajectory of your career, essentially. So working for NCLEX allowed me the opportunity to learn that there is a science behind developing licensure and certifications exams. It's not arbitrary. It's not a group of people sitting at an office, writing questions and deciding what individuals should know to determine whether they're minimally competent. That there is a documented science, there is research, there is literature to support lots of steps in the exam development process. And it's a very rigorous process to develop and to maintain these exams. And so when I do talk to candidates and explain to them about this process, and we may talk about certain steps, I actually think that that helps ease their anxiety, that it is not arbitrary, that there are multiple processes involved to make sure that we are assessing competence with documented steps.
Well, I wanted to go back to one
Mhm.
statement that you just,
Yep.
and I think it's something that people don't quite understand when you said minimally competent. Can you
Mhm.
can you clarify what that means? Because I think when people take it, they're like, this means I am the competent person, not a minimally. So what does that mean in the certification world?
That's actually a question, Michael, that I think even other individuals in the community, people kind of struggle with that term, right? There's minimally competent, just passing. There are a few different ways you can look at it. There has to be, and there is a standard that is set. And if you meet this standard, you pass the exam. And if you don't meet a standard, you don't pass the exam. And what we mean by minimally competent is that based upon this assessment that we have given you, 175 question exam, based upon this assessment and achieving a passing score, we are confident that you are able to provide safe emergency nursing care to your patients. So a lot of people have a difficult time with that word. I mean, I think there's a negative connotation associated with it.
Sure.
I think that creates anxiety in individuals as well to say, okay, so if I don't pass, that means I'm not competent. And it's not that easy, right? But I do recognize that that is a challenging word.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So, there has to be a line, right? And if you achieve a certain score, then you're given the credential. If you don't achieve a score, then you're not given the credential. And minimal competence is the term that we use.
Sure. Yeah, it makes sense. But I, like many others, when I first heard that, I was like, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. But it certainly
Agreed. I agree. I agree. It's not the best term to use, right? Because it does not mean that you are not competent to practice nursing, right? You passed your nursing licensure exam. You have a license to practice in whatever state you're practicing in. I wish that there was a better term. So if you think of one, let me know.
I'll leave it to you, to the experts
Okay.
on the show. So, another thing that has come up before is this concept of like-minded thought in going into the exam. And so you may have an item writer that's writing questions from a very, very rural facility in 2 hours from the largest city. You may have somebody that works in a very urban environment in a very, very large city in the United States. You might have somebody that's even in one of the provinces of Canada. How do you get everybody on the same page of ensuring that the information they're writing is based on standards set across the nation or across the profession, and that they aren't looking at it through the lens of, well, this is my policy at my hospital, or this is how our flight program does it? How do you ensure that consistency with the different item writers that you work with?
Item writing is an art and it is a science. So there are basic principles for writing good questions. You can find research articles, journals. For example, your STEM should be clear, direct, concise. That is just a general standard for writing a good test question. And we teach that to all of our item writers and how to formulate your questions and how to structure it and how to structure the correct answer and the incorrect answer. That's the science of writing a test question. The art, as you alluded to, is the content of the question and how to word a question and package your topic into a nice, shiny, pretty question. And like you already mentioned, we have volunteers that come from all areas of the United States, from Canada, large, small institutions, rural communities, and they bring varying degrees of expertise. But I think that that's what makes our exams so special, is that. So we use references, published references that really kind of, I look at it as, kind of this core curriculum or this standard of emergency nursing practice or burn nursing practice or flight, any of our specialties, kind of like the standard of care in that specialty, no matter where you practice. And so those references are available to our volunteers, and they use those in creating their questions. And so while they may have more of a narrow focus, having these references allows them a wider focus. We also have a group of subject matter experts who, again, represent varying degrees of expertise and practice settings and geographic areas that review these questions as well. They're kind of looking at it the same way an item writer would to make sure that the questions are appropriate. Again, we always say across the emergency spectrum. This is based upon United States standards, and our exam, you should be able to take our exam and have an opportunity to be successful no matter where it is that you work. And again, that goes back to why studying and preparing for the exam is extremely important.
As someone who took the CEN exam and really, yes, preparation was key, studying all of that, the content outline honestly seemed
Mhm.
overwhelming when the first time I looked at it. I was like, oh my gosh, I have so much studying to do. And I have been a nurse for 10 years in the emergency department. So, and I was overwhelmed by it. But even with that kind of experience, I truly did not understand kind of what was happening in the background to actually create the test. Like I knew that the test was accredited, that it, was held to a certain standards, but I didn't understand like that there were people writing questions who were also practicing in my same specialty, who were then having those questions reviewed. They had to meet certain standards. They were being evaluated and to see like, oh yes, these questions do mirror what we are asking people to prepare for. And these are living documents. They're constantly looked at, they're reviewed, they're redone again. I did not know all of that.
Mhm.
So I feel very, very, very blessed to have the opportunity to have stepped in as a volunteer with BCN and have the opportunity to see more of what it actually takes to keep these certifications alive and to continue to hold that those standards. And even if that means we progress, because that's the other thing is I got into nursing thinking like, oh, I will one day know what I'm doing all the time, and that was false. It was no, there's something always coming, there's something always changing as technology melds with research. There's always something to learn, and I think that if anyone's listening to this, the CEN exam and all of the other certification exams, they look one way today, and in 5 years from now, they will look different to mirror the practice that is happening 5 years from now. And while we don't flip on a dime to embrace every new thing coming down the pipe, I do think it's important to know that the exam is constantly evolving as the practice of nursing and medicine and healthcare continually evolves. And I think that's so cool. It's not just, hey, we're gonna make this one test and it'll be the same every time anybody ever takes it. It's not that at all. And I don't know, it's really something special to have a greater understanding of that and to realize that we get to be a part of that as someone who holds credentials with BCN, as someone who now has the chance to work with BCN. I feel like I get to be a part of something that 20 years from now will be different, but at the same time, continuing to set that standard. And I think it's just really cool. Maybe I'm nerding out a little bit. I don't know, but I do have a little less anxiety knowing that it's all happening. Things are happening.
Can I add something else, Holly?
Absolutely.
So I'm glad you brought that up. And probably my favorite part of my job is working with our volunteer subject matter experts across BCEN with our practice material and online courses and certification exam. We have close to 100 volunteer subject matter experts. And I mean, of course, I'm biased, but BCEN certified nurses are an extremely special and unique group of nurses who consistently demonstrate dedication to their specialty and to nursing in general. And I learned so much from them. I really don't need continuing education because just talking to them continues my education. I couldn't sit for any of the exams, but I think if there was an emergency situation, I'd probably be able to help out a little bit. So I want to say that. I also want to say, because there is some confusion, is that each BCEN program kind of operates separate and independent from one another. So I mentioned the rigorous processes that an exam goes through from development and maintenance. And so there is no crossover between the CEN exam and the TCRN exam. There's a separate group of item writers. There's a separate group of item reviewers. There's a separate bank of items. And that whole exam development cycle is used with each program. So again, that helps me feel confident that the exam that somebody is sitting for and taking is reflective of their particular specialty. I talked about, this rigorous process that exams go through, and you kind of alluded to it just a few minutes ago. probably the beginning of any exam development and maintenance cycle is a role delineation study or a job analysis. So at BCN, approximately every 5 years, we look at the content outline and we look at what our emergency nurses, flight nurses, burn nurses, trauma nurses doing in practice. How frequently are they performing activities or tasks? How important are these activities or tasks in their day-to-day activities? And we do this as a way to make sure that our exams are accurate, they're current, they're up to date. We know that nursing is rapidly changing. And so 5 years is actually a pretty long time, I think, in the field of nursing, but it's quite a tedious process. So more frequently than every 5 years may not be plausible. But again, every 5 years, we look at the content to make sure that what it is that we are testing is accurate. And we do this for each of the 6 exam programs. And again, that's just one part of this whole exam development and maintenance cycle, including item writing, item review, identifying how test questions are performing on an exam, setting that passing score or standard that I mentioned earlier. It is all part of this maintenance process.
Like I said, I had zero clue. And now I feel like I have more of a clue, but certainly I lend to your expertise in this. And I'm grateful to have someone like you on the team here at BCN who is just, I mean, doing all the things. And I will also say that as of this recording, you are serving as the president-elect of the Accreditation Board of Specialty Nursing Certification, ABSNC, as Michael mentioned, and you'll step into the role of the president in July of 2025. I guess with all of the things you just talked about, it seems like you've got a lot happening. So, in talking about this other role that you're taking on, what motivated you to kind of take that next step, a more responsibility, a greater role in your professional organization? And then also, how would you encourage others to recognize the value of getting more involved like you have done?
I joined the board of ABSNC, I think in 2019, to become more involved in my profession. And it is the Accreditation Board for Specialty Nursing Certification, right? But our focus, again, is on accreditation standards. It took me a while before I felt like I was very familiar and confident in all things related to the certification industry. I still don't feel like I'm an expert. I have a lot to learn. I learn something new every day, right? We are continual learners. And I was really hesitant at first to kind of jump into something so important. Like I said, I really considered myself new to the certification world. I had a lot of encouragement from my colleagues, and sometimes you just need to take a leap of faith and put yourself out there and hope that you're going to get back, right, what it is that you put in. I've had an opportunity being on the board to kind of be part of something bigger than myself and interact with colleagues across all nursing specialties. And there are some non-nursing organizations represented. We learn so much just by interacting and talking with each other. And that really has been a wonderful opportunity and experience for me. And I feel like I'm now, especially since I'm serving as president in July, I feel more connected to my industry and feel like, okay, maybe I'm going to have like a little piece, right, in the quality of nursing specialty certifications. I'm just a little piece of it, but I hope that that's what I can bring. And since my involvement with ABSNC, I've tried to become more involved in other organizations within our industry. And I would encourage people, whether it's joining a membership organization, volunteering on a hospital committee, teaching a class in your community. It's a way for us to stay engaged, connected with each other, especially in a field that's ever changing.
I think that's some great advice, Amy, especially from coming from someone who keeps saying they're not an expert. I think you have expert advice.
Maybe just in that area, Michael. So.
No, I think that I appreciate the insight. And, you did say a couple of things about being a part of something bigger than yourself and being just a piece of the entire thing. And, I think as nurses, there's a lot of what we do where we feel like we're just a small part of the entire wheel that turns to take care of patients and to do all the things that we do. But all of us impact each other. And so I get to ask this question that I always enjoy asking, and that is, if there's a certain person or a moment that impacted you or that impacted your career. I know you've mentioned a biology teacher, but obviously it takes a lot to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. And I'm sure there's a lot of people you could mention that have impacted you. But just out of curiosity, is there anybody in particular or any certain time maybe that you saw when you look back, you go, wow, that really impacted me as a nurse or as a professional?
Yes, actually, it was my second year of nursing practice. We had a patient in the ICU who actually had Marfan's syndrome. I had never seen a patient since him with Marfan's. He had all of the characteristics of Marfan's. He was very, very sick. He probably had been defibrillated, I don't know, 20, 30 times. He had been there a long time. You could see the burns on his chest, and he probably should have died many times, honestly. And it was a very, very sad situation. But whether it's a miracle or, just the hard work of nurses, physicians, support staff, he walked out of the hospital. Again, I don't remember exactly how long he had been there, but he walked out of the hospital. And I'm like, I was just, I was amazed. I was astounded. And I'm like, we can help people, right? Everyone working together, we can help people. And here is a really good example of that. So he is forever ingrained in my mind.
Oh, well, it's awesome. Thank you for sharing that story. I think it's really valuable to sometimes stop and consider the work that we do. And obviously it takes a team. It's not just the nurses doing that. It's not just the physicians, but when you have a team of individuals that are focused on positive outcomes and you see how it impacts somebody's life and they go on to go from potentially passing away to walking out of the hospital, it's certainly rewarding to see that whole continuum of care, and it makes you want to do it more for every person out there. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, I get the pleasure of asking you a few rapid fire questions, and these are just questions so we can get to know you a little bit better. Obviously, we've heard about your passion for credentialing, especially, and all of that, but now we're gonna kind of just flip a switch real quick. So, and not that we want you to go anywhere, but what would you be doing if you were not in your current role? Like, if you could just choose anything, what would you want to do?
So I love ice wine. I don't know if you're familiar with ice wine, but I would like to own an ice wine vineyard in northern Michigan because it gets very, very cold up there. Most ice wine comes from Canada, as you can imagine, and they harvest the grapes at the first frost, which is why ice wine is so expensive, because there's not a lot in a bottle. I know nothing about wine making, but if I could do that, I would figure it out.
You know what? As someone who seems to be very detailed oriented, I feel like you could figure this out. I mean, you're already up north. It's already gets
Yeah,
cold. You just
so,
need
right.
what? You just need a couple of great, what is it, vines,
I,
trees? I don't know, but
I'm
you can
sure
get
it's that simple.
those.
I'm sure
Right.
it's that simple,
I'm,
Holly.
yeah. I mean, we'll expect the Amy Grand ice wine to be vented and minted
Sure.
very soon. I'm sure we'll do a tasting before we know
Yeah.
it. So, okay. So you're gonna own an ice vineyard. I like that. Something to do. And I literally had no context for that. So I love it. I love that. Oh, I love new things. Okay, here we go. Another quick question. These are your favorites. So do you have a favorite book or quote that just kind of helps to motivate you?
I have a favorite quote. It's probably a favorite quote of many other people. And it goes like this. Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. I think most of us know that Ferris Bueller said that. But it is very true.
Yeah, we do like these questions at the dinner table when we're all eating dinner together. And one of them, it was, do you feel like life is moving too fast, or if life feels too busy or not busy enough? And I felt that question kind of just hit me. And I was like, man, if you don't ever stop and pause and go, is life moving too fast? Is life too full to actually enjoy it? I think those questions, and I think having a quote like that or a thought like that every day is a good way to help move your perspective and realize that, as I tell sometimes people who are in a tough season, I'm like, look, the days are long, but the years go by so fast. And so,
Right.
take time to remember that 5 years from now, you'll look back and go, gosh, that was just 5 years ago, man. Take time to enjoy the day, even heavy days. I think
Right.
there's still something to be grateful for. So thanks for sharing that with us. Okay, favorite movie, TV show, or a binge-worthy series, because we're always down for good recommendations.
So I have two. Michael already knows one of them, which is this TV show Dexter and all of the spin-offs from Dexter. It is dark, it is morbid, but for some reason I actually love it. And I loved Yellowstone and all of the spin-offs associated with Yellowstone. Those are my two favorites of all times.
Mm.
And they couldn't be on more opposite ends of the spectrum. So
I love that though. And what I also like is that sometimes I feel like there are shows and it's like there's the show, they have a few seasons and then it's done. And then you're like, man, I wish
I
we
want
could do
more.
that again. And I feel like lately, I don't know if it's just monetarily motivated or not, but when a show is really, really good, now they're doing all these
Yeah.
spin-offs and all these variations and backstories. And truthfully, for someone who get sad, especially like I read like book series and stuff, and I get kind of sad when I finish it. There are some book series I'm like, can we at least get the next book? But the idea is that like I like having something else to kind of go to, especially if it's one that I really liked the characters I was really invested in. So great recommendations. Okay, favorite musical artist or music that just really moves you?
My favorite song is Don't Stop Believing by Journey. Every time I hear it, as long as I am alone, I turn up the volume really loud. I sing at the top of my lungs. But again, I need to be alone when I do it because I am not a good singer and no one in my family likes to hear it. But it is like my jam song. I'm in a good mood. It just helps you get through the day, the week, the months. It's just a very powerful, uplifting song. Um, I would think most people agree with
Amy,
that.
I don't think very many people know that song. Can you just sing a couple lines?
No. Your viewers will just turn this off immediately. So
That's a great song. I actually heard
yes.
it. I heard it in the last couple of days, and yeah, It's a great song. I have some very vivid memories associated with that song. And I think
Yeah,
every time it plays, I remember those moments when I've heard it and just been like so moved by it. And
yeah.
so, yeah, it's just one of those songs. I agree wholehearted with you. You've got to play the little bit of air guitar. You've got to, go full
Do.
into trying to hit all
Yes,
of those notes. So
yes.
I'm with you. Okay. Do you have any other hobbies or like a self-care go-to, something that helps you reset?
So I was never like a gym person, like go to the gym, go on the treadmill. That's just really boring. I don't do well exercising by myself because I will always find reasons why I shouldn't do something. So it's been over 10 years. I do CrossFit classes. I don't know if anyone's familiar with it. The definition is constantly varied functional movements performed at high intensity. So it's a mix of weightlifting, gymnastics movements, cardio. It's just every day is something different and it's in a group setting and it's a really wonderful environment. So on a good week, I can do that 3 or 4 days a week. That's what I strive for. It doesn't always work like that, but I really structure my life around being able to engage in that kind of activity. Just helps me feel better, of course, physically, but mentally as well. And my second thing is I have two Boston Terriers. One is 6 and one is 3. The older one is a girl, the younger one is a boy. And they are just like the loves of my life, in addition to the rest of my family. And that, pets just have this calming presence. And you could be having the worst day and you just look at those sweet little faces and life is good again.
Mm,
So,
I agree. I agree with you. No, I agree with you about both. I think there's something about doing something physical that kind of occupies your mind. Like you really can't, to me, like when I'm doing something very physically active or focusing on something at the gym, like I can't I can't think too far away from that present moment. Like I really
exactly.
have to focus. And so I think there is something about integrating that into your life as a daily practice. And then I think too, like pets also help you to stay present because they are constantly present and they,
Right.
just have this like I want to be with you. I love you no matter that you left me alone for now. Like I don't care. I love you. Like there's something about having that type of almost just that energy from both of those things that helps to reset. So great recommendations and hopefully things that people can take away to encourage them to get that good reset in and to do some self-care. It's very important. All right, Amy, if our audience wanted to follow you online, is there a social media platform or how best could they reach out to you?
I am on LinkedIn. That's probably the best platform for me, or my contact information is on the BCN website.
Awesome. Well, we will put that in the blog for this episode. So thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. And thanks for being here and talking about nursing certification. Like Holly, I was certified before I joined BCEN, and I had no idea the amount of work and the process involved behind every certification exam. I tell people now that certification exams are like a living thing. They're not a static thing by any means, and they're constantly changing, and there's constantly work being done to delineate the roles and to look at the analytics behind the items, and there's a lot we could have gone into that would have taken a lot of time, but I think just being able to speak to your passion behind it, the work that you put into it, and clarifying some things about nursing specialty certification was really valuable. So thank you for sharing that with everybody today, Amy. It's been great having you on the podcast.
Thank you so much. It was great talking with you both.
Well, I want to take this time to thank Amy for joining us for this episode of BCN and Friends. We appreciate the passion, care, and thoughtful way in which you coordinate the living work of certification. You don't just talk about certification, you live it and you work it every day to make the dreams of so many nurses who are seeking certification a reality as they become and stay certified in their specialty. We're truly grateful for you and all that you're doing. And to all of our listeners, stay tuned as we bring new, insightful episodes of BCN and Friends. If you have an episode suggestion, we'd love to hear from you. Send us a message to bcn@bcn.org. I'm Holly Briggs, here with Michael Dexter and Amy Grand. And on behalf of the entire BCN team, we thank and celebrate you for all that you're doing as professional nurses across the emergency spectrum. Until next time, we are out.